Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Magus Brothers podcast. Oh my god, all right, we're just gonna keep recording. Chris, delete this part. I fumbled that.
Get some.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Magus Brothers podcast. I am Tyler, and with me is always the wonderful...
I am Firebrand, and welcome to episode 2 of our podcast.
Oh yeah, it's nice. I wanna take a moment before we dive into anything to just thank everyone. Firebrand and I, we are just two people with almost no community behind us. A very minimal following on Twitter. I wouldn't even use the word following.
Nah.
Just a couple of really silly people who decided to click that button. But the response so far with that first episode has been pretty good, pretty positive, and we want to thank you all for listening and joining us on this adventure.
Yeah, I'm actually really surprised at how wholesome and awesome majority of the other Final Fantasy podcasters have been when we released our first episode. So a big thank you to all of you guys. You are all awesome. And also to all of you who are not podcasters who have listened. Just thank you guys so much. You know, this has sort of been, I guess, a passion project of ours for quite a while. A couple of years at least. I know Tyler's been talking about it. And we never really had the sort of, I don't know, like motivation to get it off the ground. But because of a few key people, we're finally there. And so we're just so thankful and grateful to all of you.
Yeah. And, big shout out to, again, Chris with the First Encounter podcast.
Go listen.
If you're not listening to them, what the hell are you doing with your life?
You're wrong.
Go listen to them. They're fantastic. If you are, entertaining the idea of starting up a podcast of your own, but the idea of editing audio is incredibly intimidating to you as it is to me.
Oh, yeah.
Hit Chris up. He's editing audio. His rates are good. Give him your money. He will edit your podcast and make it sound this lovely. He's a fantastic gentleman. Super kind. Can't say enough positive things about him. Give him your money.
Do it.
So before we dive into the episode, there's a couple of housekeeping items I want to mention. One, in episode 1 of the Magus Brothers podcast, I make mention about a meme and said it was from the movie Twisted.
This has been eating at him for a while, everybody. This is really messing up his last couple weeks.
Literally the day after we got it recorded, I went back and listened to it, and I was just like, that movie is called Tangled. That character is called Eugene, and it's the part where all the mercenaries are like poking swords at him, and I called the movie Twisted and could not remember his name. I even watched the movie recently. No idea how I botched that, but I was just like, that's my first item of business when we start this episode.
Yeah, so all of us, we can collectively go ahead and make fun of Tyler because he has a kid and he doesn't know his children pop culture references, so we'll just banish him to the shadow realm for that.
Oh god, right? So this episode, before we actually dive into it, the actual episode is going to be about INTERmission / INTERgrade. I don't know the difference. We're going to find out.
There is no difference. It's just confusing marketing.
And then we're going to dive into talk a little bit about part 2 and speculate fiercely and wildly about our hopes and dreams about part 2.
Yeah, we're going to be pulling most of this stuff out of our butt. There is almost no base to any of our claims, and this is halfway a wish list and half of
they're not even claims. It's just speculation. It's dreams. It's pipe dreams.
We live on dreams.
But before we dive into that, Firebrand, how's your week been? How's your last week or two been? How are you doing?
Oh man, my last week has been actually pretty rough. I have pretty bad seasonal allergies actually, and they really flared up this last week. I don't really know if I was sick, but I was definitely hurting most of the week.
Gross.
Yeah, it was pretty gross. I didn't want to take time off of work and use my PTO because I planned on using it this week because on Saturday I got my second COVID vaccine.
Congrats.
Oh yeah. Family's getting there. Our whole country's getting there. Thank you. But you made me lose my train of thought. But I wanted to take some days off this week because, I had heard the horror stories of the second shot. And so I wanted to make sure that I could spend them at home resting. And today's day 2, and my joints are a little sore, but I'm pretty much all back to normal. And I guess other than that, it's pretty much, same as always. What about you, man? What you got going on?
So I got my second COVID shot 2 weeks back, actually. And this past Sunday, my in-laws, my grandmother-in-law, she turned 80, and the immediate family up here all got vaccinated. So we waited the 2 weeks, got together at a little park, celebrated her birthday, first time getting to see all of them in a long time. So we had a blast. It was weird being out around that many people.
Oh man.
Like it was like shell shock a little bit. And I'm an introvert, so
Aren't we all?
On top of like that introversion fostered over the last year in a way it never has been.
It's been glorious.
And then having to do that. It was weird, but it was good. It was good to see everybody, lots of hugs, lots of everybody having fun. You know, my little one, he got to run around and throw balls and kick balls, and he was playing, I forget what that, cornhole. There's that game, cornhole. He was playing that with people.
Oh, dude, I love some cornhole. That's good.
So it was fun. And aside from that, you know, got the little one down tonight. You know, he was playing Remake over the weekend, so he's like in a Final Fantasy mode right now. He's kind of coming out of his Breath of the Wild phase for a little bit, and he's back into Final Fantasy VII.
Oh yeah,
we were playing a little bit of pretend play before bed tonight, and you know, we have like a long bamboo stick, and that's what I use if I'm Sephiroth. And his grandpa has made him a couple of Buster Swords out of pieces of wood that he gets to use. And not too long ago, he really wanted to be Barrett. So we took some cardboard and like wrapped it in a cylinder, gave it a lid, and put a little couple small barrel cylinders and just taped it up. It looks like just straight up hodgepodge, but it's got a little handle and he can stick his arm in it.
Hey, if it works.
Yeah, it works.
It's all about that imagination.
And he runs around and pretends to be Barrett if he wants to. And tonight he was Barrett, I was Sephiroth. And our big thing when toy guns are involved or anything like that is, you know, they're not shooting real bullets. You know, you got to be silly. It shoots confetti or apple juice or something like that. And he's on board with that. And then tonight he was shooting chocolate syrup at me.
What?
Yeah, he just picked chocolate syrup. So I was Sephiroth and he was Barrett. We were fighting around, and you know, and that was our night before he took a bath.
So like chocolate syrup. So you guys just have what, like chocolate syrup all over your house now?
No, so it's just obviously it's imaginary.
Oh, okay.
No,
I'm envisioning your guys' like kitchen or your bathroom or something like look like a murder scene, you know, of a freaking chocolate bunny. There's chocolate just everywhere.
No. Thankfully, it's imaginary. I would not want to do cleanup with that type of play, which is weird because we've never had chocolate syrup. But here recently, he's really wanted chocolate milk. And we talked about how chocolate syrup's an important ingredient in that. And so he's just remembering it until we get it.
Well, yeah, good on him. Chocolate milk is awesome.
Yeah, you know, 5-year-olds, they're just like, I will never let you forget this thing until I have it, ever.
Yeah, that never changes. My oldest is 13? She's 13, and she doesn't forget anything. That never goes away. You have to look forward to forever.
Well, I'm going to buckle up because I guess I'm going to never have to forget anything either and stay one step ahead if I can.
Good luck. We all know your memory is garbage.
Oh, yeah. It's trash. It's not going to happen. That's a bigger pipe dream than some of the things we're going to talk about in part 2, which, speaking of...
Wow,
do you like that,
nice segue.
Do you like that segue?
That was beautiful.
That was
I loved it.
Been a little pat myself on the back.
You should.
Anyway, I don't know if you could hear that.
He physically patted himself on the back. In case you guys couldn't hear that, I want you to know.
I hope the mic picked it up.
All right, put him on blast, boys.
All right, so at this point, I don't know if I already mentioned this, but Haney, if you're listening, get the out. You can't listen to any of this. This is not Haney safe.
Get out of here. Come back in like 5 years when you finished all of these video games.
I know, so long. But let's talk about intermission, INTERgrade. Fire, tell me the difference. What's the difference between intermission and INTERgrade?
Okay, so from what I understand, INTERgrade is the new title of the part 1 of the remake because it now includes the DLC, and then intermission.
And the DLC is named INTERmission?
And then the DLC is named INTERmission, which none of the... Okay, Square Enix, like, what the heck, you guys? This is overkill.
So there's a lot of entering here.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But so all jokes aside, one, terrible marketing, I feel. But
so it's Square Enix.
It's Square Enix. It's confusing. But we know how Square Enix loves their naming conventions and their weird names. And there was, I'm going to butcher this, and I'm sorry, I'm going to look it up and I'm going to credit in the episode after, but I think it was Sleep Easy who did that long 5-episode theory that you and I watched a long time.
No, that was him.
Okay, Sleep Easy. Great set of videos. I mean, I don't know if all of his speculations are going to come true, but either way, like, that dude's a madman for making all of those connections and making that many hours of content.
I just pictured him in a giant room with, like, tacks everywhere, connecting them with red yarn,
red tape
or whatever, and
red tape.
If you guys want like some like put on a tinfoil hat conspiracy theory levels stuff, you should go watch his videos. Oh my lord.
In his videos, and not just him, but I think a lot of people have speculated and talked about this, about the subtle implications of Loveless because of the acts of the play, and it was a big thing in Crisis Core with Genesis, and the parts of the compilation kind of mirroring aspects of it. And I don't know if any of this is true. You know, I don't know how big brain Square Enix gets behind closed doors, but it is interesting that the middle part...
Insert a Nomura joke there.
Right. But it's interesting that the Yuffie DLC is called Intermission, and intermission is a term used for theater and plays for a break type of thing. And again, we're not the first person to make this observation, but I did find that interesting because it doesn't confirm that Loveless is massively significant, but it is that little like, are you paying attention? Like, could be.
There's all sorts of implications with tons of stuff that they've told us about this DLC, and I honestly cannot wait for June 10th to get here. It's just so I can play it and come out even more confused than I was before, because I already know that's what's going to happen.
Well, and it's even a bigger thing for you because I've played Remake, and then I replayed it on hard mode and had to do multiple chapters multiple times because I was horribly inefficient while trying to platinum the game. And then I platinumed it. It was literally the first game I've ever platinumed. And I have also replayed it a third time so that my kiddo could watch. And then I have played specific chapters from the game so many times that like I'm actually borderline dreading playing them again on the PS5 upgrade just because I've played those specific chapters so many times with my kiddo. Like the opening bombing mission, chapter 18, the airbuster sequence because he loves the big giant robots. I'm just like, I don't want to do those again, but I'm going to do them again because I want those graphics. Whereas you played it the one time.
Yep.
And that was it.
That's it.
And you haven't touched it since then.
I played through this game 1.5 times. No, actually, I don't even know how to do it. I played through it completely once at launch. I played through it halfway again because I only did half of a no commentary playthrough for YouTube that I gave up on because of who I am as a person. And then I played through half of hard mode.
At least you're honest.
I know who I am. And then I only played halfway through hard mode because I was frustrated and I didn't like the artificial difficulty and the lame way they limited you to be able to play it. And this was all like back to back to back right at launch. So this is over a year ago now. And it was also one of the very first games I played on my stream on Twitch, twitch.tv/Fairbrand. And shameless plug.
Good one.
And so I was still a fairly new streamer, and you know, I was very overwhelmed by it. And I sort of didn't really pay that well of attention to the story. So I lost a lot of it. And I still haven't replayed it since. So I'm actually looking forward to replaying this game on the PS5. And it's just going to make it all the more sweeter in those sweet, you know, like 60 FPS graphics or whatever. I think it goes up to 60 FPS.
Yeah, so you'll be replaying the game again and then doing the Yuffie DLC on top of it. So it's all going to be like super fresh.
Oh yeah, we're going to be recording an episode where I'm going to be coming here hot to trot, ready to like lay down some theories.
Yeah, like we're going to touch 7 Remake with like talking about this DLC in part 2, but we're not actually going to talk much about the 7 Remake itself as far as like how we feel about it in theories, because we want Fairbrand to play that again, and he's not going to touch it again until PS5 upgrade. So you got a bit of weight there.
Yeah, especially because of the ending. I thought maybe sitting on the ending for a while and like letting it marinate in my brain juice would kind of help me make a decision on whether I liked it or not, and it just hasn't. I still don't have an opinion on it, and I don't like that I don't have an opinion on it. So another reason I'm very much looking forward to it.
And you've watched a lot about the ending, like theories and stuff like that too, that I've linked you. So it's like you've seen other people's theories too on top of your experiences.
Oh,
and
yeah.
You still are kind of like, I'm not sure.
Oh, yeah. I've definitely, watched videos on people's opinions and how they think it's going to happen and blah, 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 blah. But that's totally different than, the immersion factor of when you play something yourself. And, you're playing it basically seamlessly rather than some YouTube video that's jumping all over the place, connecting more things with, red string or whatever.
Yeah, I can't imagine trying to like immerse yourself into a game that you want to like give your undivided attention to, but also streaming it. So like I'm excited for you to replay the game and like just give all of your attention to it.
Yeah, and like now as a streamer here, I've been streaming like what, a year and a half or so. Like if I was to play it now, I wouldn't have had any problems with it. It was just the fact that I was so new. I'm very good now at dividing my attention between monitoring my stream, the game I'm playing, chat, my 14,000 children, my 1,400 dogs. You know, I'm a lot better at it now.
Oh my God. Oh. So the DLC, it's going to have the actual Yuffie parts. There's 2 chapters.
Yeah.
Is what they said.
No idea how long they'll be.
Yeah, I'm curious how long the chapters will be because in my multiple replays of Remake, I have noticed that while there's 18 chapters, there are so many of those chapters that like, especially if you've played it before and you know what you're doing, they are very breezy. And then there's chapters that are just not quick at all, like chapter 17 or well, chapter 18, I guess is quick, but there's just a lot of cutscenes there. So like mileage may vary, but I'm curious how long the DLC will actually be considering it's 2 chapters.
Well, also like the chapters in 7 Remake, the base game, a lot of them have some fluff, whether that's, you know, side quests or the stupid crane game when you're with Aerith or, as you said, like cutscene heavy, like here's this lore dump. So like while the chapters could be long or short, it could be for various reasons. And like, are these chapters going to be all lore, all action, mixed match of both? Like we don't really know. So like this could easily be like 10 hours worth of DLC for $20.
I feel like if they're introducing all these new characters, you know, especially such an important character like Yuffie, if it's only 2 chapters, I feel like there's going to be a lot of cutscenes. I feel like they'll be pretty lengthy chapters for just 2. We're going to get cutscenes. We're going to get a lot of character interaction, and they're going to really hone in on that story of Yuffie because yes, it's DLC. Yes, it's 2 chapters, but I feel like they're going to give Yuffie an arc that makes sense. Whether that's this character that's introduced with her, Sonnen from Wutai, whether it's through their camaraderie and their interactions that give her an arc, or even that, plus there's been a lot of speculation about Sonnen being like, oh, Sonnen just looks like the type of character that's gonna die to move.
Don't say that.
Yuffie's arc along.
Don't say that.
And on top of it, apparently the Japanese voice actor, who's I don't know the name at all, always voices characters that have tragic deaths, and Audrey like specifically called it out, was like, he's gonna die.
Oh, I didn't know anything about this, and you're making me sad because I was doing research for both this podcast and a YouTube video I'm making where, you know, it's talking about how Sonnen is going to have a very grounded, more serious personality, and Square Enix highlighted how that's really going to contrast against Yuffie's. And I just know from the writing from the first part, from 7R, that they're going to have some amazing character interactions. And I remember actually recording a bit earlier for YouTube where I said that I was probably going to cry if they killed him off, because I know I'm going to come to love him, because Square has been doing so well writing their characters recently. And I don't know if I have it in me. I may break down.
I've had this thought rattling around in my head, and I don't know if I think you and I talked about it, and I don't want to belabor this point too much. I want to save it for when we actually dive into talking about part 2, or not part 2, but the Final Fantasy VII Remake. In part 1, quite a few characters survive that died in the original.
Yo.
And not just that, but a lot of people escape.
Like all of them?
Yeah, and a lot of people escape the platefall. Now, I'm sure some people escaped the platefall in OG, and we just really didn't get to see it. And I even replayed that chapter recently with my kiddo, and you do see a section where the high graphic cutscene where they're swinging on the rope, and you see Ketchi come out and slam the ground, but you see the platefall, and you see people like scrambling as that debris is like falling. So like it's very obvious that people died. Like, and I didn't remember that part where you see people running as stuff is falling on them. And I was like, oh, damn, okay, people do kind of die. But the game kind of plays up this idea that a lot of people do survive platefall. And I've been toying with this idea of, do people need to die to propel character arcs forward, or for the story to actually have meaning, or for it to communicate consequences and gravitas? Is a death needed? And again, we'll talk more about that in part 1, but more to the point with Sonon, maybe he doesn't die. Maybe it's just that him and at the end, maybe Yuffie and his interactions, they're just so different and they butt heads so much that he's like, you know what, I can't be a part of this. And he leaves, and maybe, that propels Yuffie a certain direction. And maybe he comes back up when we return to Wutai with Yuffie in part 2 or whatever section that pops up at. But he comes back to kind of fulfill and make complete that character arc or interaction with Yuffie. So who knows? He doesn't need to die, but
no, he doesn't.
People think
he
he's
doesn't need
die.
to die. I don't want him to.
But
yeah, because it was weird that a whole bunch of people, Avalanche, didn't die, and I'm curious to see how that's going to impact Barrett and his, because when they died, he just got like what's the word I'm trying to think of, like reinvigorated in his mission to take down Shinra. And if they don't die here now in the remake, is he still going to feel that same way? Is he still going to be as dedicated to his cause?
Yeah, I mean, he seems pretty, and again, if we dive into this too far, we're going to be talking all about part 1. But
that's us.
Yeah, that's us. Tangents. Scrap the entire episode plan. We'll just dive into do whatever the hell we want. But Barrett comes across very driven to save the planet. And I don't think that their deaths or their surviving will change his drive and desire to save the planet, because here pretty quickly there will be other things pulling him along. He'll have Dine and the Coral, Mount Coral start to come in, and some of his character development will start to pick up and propel him. Not to mention that I'm 99% sure that Jesse is definitely dead. And while Biggs and Wedge may be alive, Biggs certainly alive. Wedge, it sounds like he got pushed out of a building, but the screen was black and we didn't see a body, so I'm not convinced.
Never be convinced.
Never.
No body, no crime.
And even if they are alive, I don't imagine, they may pop back up and leave Midgar, maybe, but at the same time, I don't think that's going to slow Barrett down from wanting to save the world, let alone all of this Sephiroth BS going.
Well, I don't think it'll, slow him down to the point where he's like, oh, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm just like I'm thinking of in Cosmo Canyon when they're all sitting around Cosmo Candle and, you sit down and talk to Barrett and he's like, oh, this is where Avalanche first was created. And, he starts bringing up memories of Biggs, Wedge, and Jesse. And he's just like, all right, you know what? Screw these people. We got to do this. Let's go. And I don't know, that's one of my favorite scenes from the original because of how, everyone's really starting to feel things out, and it's really emotional for whoever you talk to. And I'm worried that scene's not going to be as impactful, but I'm also not worried because they've taken scenes from the original and made them so much more impactful in the remake that I'm not that worried about it. But I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, maybe the solution is they find a new way for that scene, because I feel like they've done this a couple of different times. Maybe they find a new way to make the scene impactful without it being, Barrett crying out Biggs, Wedge, Jesse, and talking about this is where Avalanche started. Maybe it will be something different that hits us in an unexpected way that we weren't anticipating.
And that's totally possible, and I'd be okay with that. Back on to the story of INTERgrade, INTERmission, whatever it's called.
INTERwhatever.
INTERwhatever. We know that this is per Square Enix. They said that the ending of this is going to lead up to Yuffie uniting or meeting up with Cloud and everybody. So, that leads to...
So, question for you.
Okay, go ahead.
When they say that, because Square Enix has said many things that is kind of vague that can be interpreted a couple ways, do you think that means that we'll end with Yuffie meeting up with the party? Or do you think it's just going to end with, her going off to... I mean, you run into her in the forests outside of Junon, right?
Yeah.
Whatever she's going to do at the end, maybe it propels her. And we know as an audience, having played it before, she's going up to where we're going to run into her. What do you think?
So I guess I've never really thought about that. And that brings up some interesting thoughts that I have, because initially my thought was always, she's just going to meet them outside Midgar because she's hiding out in Calm or something. So then obviously, we would know that, one, she's not an optional character, which I never assumed she would be since it's the remake. And she only became an optional character because of time constraints or something in the original. But
corner cutting.
but now let's think of this way. Now it's 2 chapters long, okay? Now maybe, going on what you said, maybe part of the second chapter is actually we're going to be playing as Yuffie out on the quote-unquote world map. Maybe they're giving us a taste of this open world thing, and we'll still meet her at some random little camp thing in the forests of Junon, and they just want to give everybody that little taste of, hey, this is what's to come. This is what we've decided that the world map and open world, if it's open world, but like the actual mainland of this game is going to be like, and it's possible that we may get a taste of that. Or it could just be simply as, Yuffie's been watching from the shadows this whole time throughout the main game of 7R, and all of a sudden she's just chilling there waiting for us as we climb down the chain.
And that's exactly what I was going to say, is because in the trailer we saw for it, because as you're talking about this, it made me remember or think of an idea, is that we clearly don't know what's going to happen with Yuffie's story. So I'm not even going to speculate there what's going to propel her forward. But we do see in the trailer that she sees Tifa, Barrett, and I think it's Biggs. And she's like, oh, that's Avalanche. They bombed the reactor. I want to go talk to them. And then Sonon and them are like, no, like, they've got ShinRa all over them. Like, that's not good for us or our mission. We don't need that type of attention. I'm extrapolating. It's well more paraphrased.
That's basically
in
what
the trailer.
That's basically what they say.
But the point is, Yuffie sees them. And this is, of course, based off of the dialogue with Barrett and Tifa. This is happening after the Sector 5 bombing with Airbuster, and Cloud has fallen and they've come back. Yuffie's seeing them. And so Yuffie knows who Barrett and Tifa are at the very least. She knows they are Avalanche. And so it's very plausible that with whatever happens at the end of her story, maybe she's like, I'm going to go seek Avalanche out. And so she goes and looks for us outside of Midgar. Like, she knows who we are. Like, she may not know Cloud per se, but she knows who to look for. So maybe it's not just like a serendipitous, like, oh, we bumped into this ninja who's just...
this mystery ninja.
This mystery ninja. Like, no, she's very likely looking for us.
I have to imagine that that's the direction Square Enix is going, since they obviously are not cutting any corners. And they're trying to fill in those plot holes that they created in the original game. So I couldn't imagine it just be something random like, I'm going to steal your materia, and we fight her in some random... No, I cannot believe that that's what's going to happen. It has to be more organic than that.
I agree. Some of the other things to look forward to with the DLC, though, is that we're going to get some more minigames, apparently.
Yeah.
And I believe it was plural, not just one minigame, but plural minigames. One of which is the board game Fort Condor, that apparently one of the characters being introduced, Polk, loves playing.
What?
Fort Condor.
Just like, what? What? There's so many implications.
So one, Fort Condor is, you either love Fort Condor or you hate Fort Condor. And I feel like Haney was one of the hate Fort Condor people. But I thought Fort Condor was tight. Like, when I played it, I loved setting the little guys up. And granted, I come to find out, like, you didn't need to do any of that. And you just needed to let them hit the little house, and then you would just blitz the one guy. And it was like, oh, I could have saved Gil.
It's even easier than that. There's a tactic to rush the bottom of the screen. And if there's 0 enemies on screen, no matter how many you've killed, then you automatically win. So there's a way. And and if you ever watch any of my playthroughs of the original 7, you see me do it, where you just rush troops down to the bottom, kill the first like 2, 3, 4 enemies, and as soon as they're dead and there's 0 enemies on screen, you just win. It's even faster.
I did not know that. So yeah, so Fort Condor, many ways to play it. Interesting game, but on top of that information, they said that there is going to be new materia that we did not see in Part 1, which makes sense. They're going to add some like new interesting mechanics in for Yuffie to use and for materia, but they also said there was going to be new summons. So the speculation on Twitter has been that due to it being a Fort Condor game, we might see Phoenix as one of the summons, which is interesting. It's not unprecedented, because them giving us Phoenix this early will be so early, like super early. But also we got Leviathan super early and Bahamut. So it's like, okay, like, I guess my like, oh dang, we're getting that summon early, but like they already did that. So I guess it's not super early. Like, you don't even get summons in Midgar
Yeah.
part 1, but they were just like, you can't have a Final Fantasy game without summons, so here you go. Here's a bunch.
And then they were just giving them for free, too. You even got the 3 pre-order ones or whatever it was.
Yeah, the little, like, mini summons.
Like Carbuncle and all that junk. So, I mean, like, who really knows?
But, like, thematically, it makes sense. Phoenix as a summon, Fort Condor, like, I could see it.
Yeah, there's definitely some dots there that connect, and that's 100% speculation, but I think it's pretty solid. It could be something random. Maybe we'll get Kajata.
Oh, yeah, like, it could be something, like, totally different. Like, they could surprise us. You know, maybe Square Enix knows we're expecting Phoenix, and they're just like, psych!
Jabate us.
The pull a Jesse on us.
They're thirsty?
No, like, Jesse says psych all the time. Isn't like a couple times throughout the game, she's like, psych!
Yeah, I don't remember. I really need to play this game again. I'm a terrible
Play the damn
person.
game again. Jesus Christ, you can't even get my jokes.
Well, you're not very funny.
Oh, I hope somebody I hope somebody listening laughed.
I'm sure somebody will. At least one.
So anyway, so some of the other things, apparently Avalanche is assisting Wutai, and apparently it's the main branch of Avalanche, not Barrett's segment of it.
Oh, yes. This is Avalanche HQ.
Yeah, is assisting Wutai in obtaining, and I believe the quotations from the source is that they're trying to obtain the ultimate materia. And there's been speculation about what type of materia the ultimate materia is. Is it black materia, proto materia? It could be huge materia. You know, huge materia is a big thing in the OG, and we do see Scarlet working on some type of materia in the test tube that goes awry and blows up, and she's doing something with materia. So Shinra's working on materia already, which is, you know, very Shinra, but that could be what Yuffie and Wutai are after. Some materia that Shinra is working on.
That's totally possible. And I remember in that cutscene, because I watched it recently, that they even were talking about it growing in a positive way, which leads me to believe that they were attempting to create huge materia. Now, while that may not be what Yuffie and Wutai and all of them are after, you know, it would be believable if it is. And
maybe in search of something else, they find out about the huge materia or see it, and they're like, ooh.
That's true, too. It could just be a little extra thing. Because, I mean, I have to imagine that Yuffie's going to go inside Shinra HQ as well.
Yeah, I mean, that would make sense. Like, we getting to see Yuffie get that close to essentially her greatest enemy, which arguably maybe is not Shinra. You know, we could speculate about, like, her dad and, you know, Wutai itself and what they become post-war. But Shinra is ultimately, like, the bad guy for her.
Yeah.
So getting that close and her seeing it and us seeing that and, like, really instilling that would be great character development, because that's something we lacked in the OG with her being optional.
Or what she could be doing is seeking out this ultimate materia to use it to take down Shinra, and she could be going down into Deep Ground, which I'm pretty sure that's the science lab we explored in 7R when we fell through it or whatever, and I think you fought like Behemoth down there.
Yeah, I don't remember if it's like explicitly stated like this is Deep Ground in like those bold words, but like everyone is like, that's Deep Ground. We know what's up.
I for some reason I have this vision in my head of it being called Deep Ground Facility, but don't quote me on that.
You know what? I think you're right. I think it is like literally called Deep Ground Facility.
Yeah. So We're just going to operate on the assumption that it is, and we're going to just preach it as fact. So,
and if we're wrong, we're going to get called out immediately.
Hey, man, the best way to get an answer on the internet is to say something wrong.
You're not wrong. Oh my God, that's great.
So let's run on this little tangent.
So we know Deep Ground from the trailer is there in this DLC. So like we already know it. So this is perfect.
Yes. So, you know, Square said that the compilation of Final Fantasy, everything outside the OG, is not canon anymore. They're not operating with any of those stories in mind. But what they are going to do is draw from those materials into the remake parts and use it as inspiration to help flesh out the world and characters and blah, 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 blah. So
before you continue, I'm going to cut you off because I do believe that the compilation is canon to itself, but to Remake, it's not canon. Remake is pulling from it. It's not that.
Thank you for the clarification.
Canon, period.
Yes, it is not canon to the remake. Thank you for that clarification. So Yuffie could very well be going down into Deep Ground looking for the proto-materia, and this is a huge storyline from Dirge of Cerberus, where Yuffie was actually one of the bigger main characters. You know, she assisted Vincent in doing his chaos stuff, trying to stop Omega. And we also know that here in this new DLC, we're going to see Weiss. who was one of the main villains of Dirge Cerberus. And we know, well, if they haven't changed this, he is still locked up underneath Midgar in a deep ground facility where he's like chained to his throne, or he's like contained to his throne. Those are like the exact words they use. And we know Weiss is in this game. We don't know in what capacity, if he is a battle simulation, because that's kind of what the little bit of the trailer he was in looks like. It does look like the battle sim background. Or if he's actually like, oh, Yuffie's going to run into Weiss down in the deep ground facility because she's going after the proto materia, which is where I believe they said it used to be kept or something like that. So Yuffie could be going down there to get that. And I don't remember where I was going. I totally lost my train of thought.
I mean, that right there is pretty good speculation. I mean, I will say, to kind of tack on with the Weiss thing, it does in the trailer look like it's a combat sim thing, but they've also released not just the renders, but like the information about him, the little tidbits that they've released on their official website. It seems like an awful lot of information to release for just a combat sim fight. You know, that could have been just a surprise or like a little sneak with the trailer, but they're doing renders and information. So even if it is just a combat sim, I think we could be seeing more of Weiss.
Yeah, I definitely think if this is just a combat sim, I believe that this will just be a setup for more of him later on down the line because of those reasons. Like, you're revealing him as, you know, kind of giving us the assumption that he's going to be a major player in this remake. So why would they give us all that info if it's just like, oh yeah, optional fight, have fun?
Yeah, and not just that, but there was the interview that Nomura and the development team did with Famitsu, and Nomura comments about how he really wanted to have Weiss and Cloud fight. You know, like that was something that he wanted to have happen. And, you know, that could mean a couple of different things. It could mean Weiss is going to reappear to the party and maybe the party has to fight him. Maybe Cloud has to fight him, or maybe he is just in the battle simulator and later down the road, Cloud can fight him, and that'll be like to tickle that fancy.
Now, what if this is how they're going to introduce Weiss, obviously, through the Yuffie story, but later on down the line, when we eventually come back to, you know, airdrop back into Midgar, way down the line, that's when we finish this story arc.
That is possible, because I do, considering how they've expanded on Midgar, I don't see us re-entering Midgar via airdrop being as simple as it was in OG. You know, because you could explore around, like that's when you go back, you could go back to ShinRa Tower and like reclaim Ketchi's ultimate weapon, right? Like that's when you can go back to the, so like you can do more than just, you know, ascend the Mako Cannon and fight Hojo and Proud Claude or whatever its name was. So I could really see them expanding that little segment with more deep ground stuff, or even Weiss getting introduced or whatnot. I could definitely see that.
I think that's actually a great idea. Really flesh out that, because the Dirge of Cerberus story is actually pretty freaking cool, where, you know, they're trying to use Omega to gather up the life stream to take it to another planet, and Vincent is Chaos, and he's the only one who can stop it because he was infused with, I think, the proto materia in order to become Chaos, and it's a crazy
Chaos
story.
Is a weapon, apparently.
Yeah.
Like that was super tight.
Yeah, like
you have a character on your party this whole time that's a weapon.
I know, and then he's just a little garbage limit breaks.
Well,
they should fix that.
That's like top 5 list of wants and dreams from future parts of Remake is please make Vincent's limit breaks not like the original game.
Yeah.
Make him transform, but don't make us lose complete control of him indefinitely. And if we do lose control of him, make it like 30 seconds or something.
Or just give us the option for him to like de-transform or something. I don't know. Maybe he'll act like a summon and you can sort of give him commands.
Or you could pick his abilities at least at that point. I don't know.
Just something better than what it is. Like all you can do is go up.
Exactly. You literally, the bar's on the floor, Square Enix. Just pick it up.
Just lift it a little bit. I know it's not that heavy.
Oh, man. Moving on to some other things, because really, I mean, aside from that, you know, is there really much more to cover with INTERgrade or INTERmission? Like, we know, there's one thing I wanted to touch on. The new battle mechanics, that Sonon's not a playable character.
Yeah, we only can control Yuffie.
But Yuffie and Sonon can do little team-up attacks, and, you know, I don't know if they'll do more damage or do anything, or if they're literally just flashy ATB attacks, but, you know, we see him use his staff to launch and propel Yuffie in the air and like do some cool little combat maneuvers and like swing her around. And so, one, that's tight. It looks cool. But two, it opens up the door for, I see this as like a testing bed personally for like future parts of the remake where you can do little team tactics depending on who you choose your party to be. You can have like Nanaki jumping off of Cloud's sword or them doing different types of maneuvers via combat where they're just like teaming up. You know, we get to see moments like they had in Advent Children helping each other out and get like super anime. So maybe that's something they're testing out.
Yeah, I mean, so we're going to get all sorts of new combat. And what I'm hoping is that it translates into the next part of the remake, like you said, so that we can get, it's a little more in depth. I wasn't super big fan of the combat in the first part. And I think that's a big reason I ended up not finishing off hard mode or anything. I'm not really an action combat type of person. And even with it being that hybrid thing, it's just, it wasn't my thing. So I'm hoping, you know, with the Sonon type stuff going on, where it's sort of like team attacks or 2-player attacks or whatever, that it kind of makes it appeal more to me. And, you know, since he's using a staff, it makes you think, oh, is this going to be like how Sid's going to be or whatever? And there's just so much speculation. And I'm just hoping that they add more into the combat for the second part.
I agree. I really hope that, especially with like Nanaki, they add some interesting layers there because I could see him like leaping off of people or, you know, weapons and whatnot. And just, I'm really excited for Nanaki's combat, honestly, like having a non-human character and like how he's going to move across the battlefield and stuff like that. Like,
yeah, I'm not really sure what to expect of him because all he really did was a little flip. And I don't really know what they could do with him rather than attacking people with his headband. If they're going to, you know, implement some biting or clawing type attacks or whatever.
Yeah, who knows? But hopefully, you know, fingers crossed, E3 is in June. I forget the dates. Should have wrote them down, but it's in June.
I think it's like the 23rd or something.
Yeah, it's like mid to like late June-ish. You know, we were talking about what we were going to see at E3, and honestly, I 90% expect to see Final Fantasy 16 there.
Yeah.
Hopefully a release date, a new trailer. I think that it's too soon to see anything for part 2 of Remake. I'm not expecting a trailer. I'm honestly not even really expecting news. We'll have just gotten the DLC, and they'll be like, shut up, let us put 16 out.
Oh, yeah. I'm on board with you. I'm fully expecting to see this as a 16 info dump, since they already said we will get more info this year. They said that at the release of 16. And with, you know, the name INTERmission, is this marking the halfway point between part 1 and part 2? And if it is, then we still got over a year to go before part 2 is released. So I just don't see part 2 info getting dropped. Now, if it does, my mind's going to be blown and everybody can make fun of me because I was wrong, and I'll happily accept that flack. But I just don't see this being a part 2 information. This is going to be 16 and possibly 14 here at this E3.
And I will say that, unfortunately, we're recording this, and May 7th is coming up in a couple of days. And they did say that there was going to be a presentation over, what's the Battle Royale? That's the First Soldier. That's the name of the Battle Royale game. And they're doing a little presentation on that on May 7th. And they specifically said in the press release for that they were going to talk about INTERgrade some more there. So we will get a little bit of news snippet there. You know, we'll probably cover that in a future episode, but there is that to look forward to for us, not for you listening, because that'll be the past. Oh man, recording a podcast is kind of like some timey-wimey Doctor Who time travel bullshit.
Yeah, it's the future for us, but the past for you.
Anyway, so that about covers what we want to talk about with INTERgrade and INTERmission. So we're going to briefly talk about part 2. Hopes and dreams, some things we're going to speculate on. We're not going to spend too much time about that because we don't want this podcast episode to get obscenely long. But to start off, Firebrand, we've talked about this a lot. How many parts do you think there's going to be in the remake? And this is going to be a 2-part question. How many parts do you think there's going to be? And how many parts do you want there to be?
Ooh, that's good. Okay, so I want,
objectively and subjectively,
I want there to be 3 parts. And that's a selfish reason. And it's that I don't want to wait that long to play through all of it. And also, I feel that I want part 2 to end with Aerith's death, because I think...
Spoiler.
Yeah, spoiler. For somebody who's played the original, I think that's a great place to end the game because it's such a heavy moment. And then like, haha, wait 2 more years, suckers. And it's like the ultimate tease, but that's where I want part 2 to end. And a big piece of that is from the events from leaving Midgar to her death is about the same amount as from her death to the end of the game. Now, if we don't include like side content, because there is a lot of side content in the latter half of the OG.
A lot of optional fluff.
Yeah. You know, with Chocobo Racing, the Ancient Forest, all the weapon fights, all that stuff. Like that adds in and makes it bigger. But I would like it to be 3 parts. Totally selfish reasons. But honestly, knowing Square, and I feel like I know them pretty well, I think it's going to be 4 parts. And that's going to be a mixture of, because they really, really want to add so much more content and flesh stuff out and do it right, because they're tired of people complaining about wanting this game remade. So that they're just kind of like, we're going to give them so much that they're just going to shut up and never bother us about this again. And we can just continue to make other games and leave us alone.
Joke's on them. They're remaking The Last of Us after only 10 years. So 10 years from now, we're going to be like, all right, we're ready for a remake of this game. Precedent's been set.
I want a PS7, Final Fantasy VII remake. You know, just get that theme of sevens going on. I want a Final Fantasy VII remake.
Final Fantasy VII Remake Remade would be the title of this game. That's what it would be.
I can't imagine they would actually do that, though, but that's totally what it would be named.
Oh, man. But I'm right there with you. And you answered kind of my follow-up question to this, too, which I'll circle back to and point out what it was. But I would love the game to be 3 parts because, one, trilogies sell. Like, trilogies are a thing. There's great trilogies that it's marketable. Like, trilogies the hot thing. Star Wars does trilogies. Lord of the Rings was trilogies. Like, trilogies is sellable. But I think there is far too much to cram into 3 titles, especially with how they expanded Midgar. And while they intentionally expanded Midgar, even beyond just expanding the story in Midgar, adding in all of the character interactions, the things they're really trying to like add into this game to make it bigger, I just don't see it being 3 parts. I think it's probably going to be 4. I can't imagine in good faith that they would let it go to 5. I think even Square Enix would be like, that's too much. That's too long. And making them pay too much money. But 4 parts is what I'm thinking. I would love, again, right there with you, for part 2 to end with Aerith dying, because that would be such a heavy moment. And then we would have to wait 2-3 years and there would be so much talk about that. But I honestly think what we'll get, and this makes sense to me and I want it, but I think we'll start part 2 with the calm flashback either immediately or pretty dang quick of Nibelheim. And then part 2 will end with us back at Nibelheim, realizing that it did not, quote unquote, burn down. And it's like that narrative full circle there. And then Tifa and Cloud being like, what the hell?
Ooh, that could be good. That's juicy. I never thought of it like that.
Yeah. And then on top of it, this is going to segue to the next thing. They said in an interview, and I don't know who specifically, but I'm just going to call it the development team. They said that they never intended to do DLC to begin with. It was just they put out the PlayStation 4 version. They were working on the PS5 upgrade. And then we're like, oh, let's take this time to dive into the PS5 hardware and figure out what we're working with before we do the part 2. And we'll work on like a little DLC and we'll do Yuffie. But they said that they did not intend to do any DLC moving forward. Now, some people would take that as Square Enix saying there is going to be no more DLC. However, I believe that means we don't plan to do any more DLC. But think about this. Part 2 ends at Nibelheim. That's right before we meet Vincent. And to keep our lips wet, so to speak, waiting for part 3, they give us some DLC again for 2 chapters, and it's Vincent DLC. Because we're right there, and we either get some Vincent DLC either with him being a Turk before the events of OG Final Fantasy VII, and we get that Lucretia good and the Hojo good, or maybe it's, I forget what game it was in, but the Turks wake Vincent up once before he's woken up by Cloud and company, and I do not remember what they wake him up for, but he is woken up, and maybe we get to see that I don't know. It could just be a chance to get to do some Vincent DLC and kind of get us hungry for that character, because honestly, like when you talk about some of the favorite characters in Final Fantasy VII, Vincent's pretty high up there for most everyone.
Yeah, and that could even...
Our little emo vampire.
That can even tie back into the proto-materia.
Mm-hmm.
Because using the proto-materia is what made him into the vampire or whatever he is now. So we could even have his...
Well, it was chaos that did that, and then proto-materia lets him control the chaos.
Okay, with that in mind, this could be the DLC, like you said, of the flashback of him with the Turks, and then it expanding more into chaos, the proto-materia, deep ground, blah, 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 blah. And it just sort of like being the same as Yuffie, and it's just fleshing out that sub-story as it preps us for whenever we finally do reach the end of that arc, presumably in the return to Midgar.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a good place for it. And even you speculated, too, when we were talking about this, that could be, maybe they don't do Vincent. Maybe they keep us, they edge us for Vincent, and instead they give us some Sid DLC. Maybe we go space program route.
Sid is what I want, but what did the people want? The people want Vincent. I'm more of a Sid boy than a Vincent boy, but overall, throughout the community, Vincent is definitely more well liked. I mean, he did get his own video game.
The overall point being is that if part 2 ends at Nibelheim, there's 2 characters we're still missing, so DLC to kind of highlight either of those 2 characters would make sense.
Right, and, with the Yuffie thing, she's next in line in OG for us to recruit. And if it ends at Nibelheim, Vincent would be next in line for us to recruit. But, that's assuming they'll make DLC, which I want them to. I will happily pay $20 more for more DLC because I'm a shill and I love giving Square Enix my money.
God, ain't that the truth? I mean, you and I both, not just you, but yeah.
Yeah. All
right. So the last thing we're going to talk about part 2 before we wrap this off the rails beast up. And this is a big open topic that we are going to tangent off on for many, many episodes, I'm sure, throughout. But open world, you already mentioned the open world once. And I feel like that's got a lot of people worried / excited / how's Square Enix going to do this? What do you think? What this whole open world that we're about to go into, this boundless, terrifying freedom, leaving the steel sky, all this wonderful stuff. How do you think they're going to do this?
Man, I have no idea. And I don't even know what I want them to do. Like, I have a problem with open world games where I just get too distracted. And sometimes there's too many things to find. And then you do all these side quests that are just garbage and like add nothing to the story or the characters or anything, or even build on the world. It's just filler, and like bad filler at that. A lot of open world games get trapped into that kind of thing, and I don't know if it needs to be open world. I know the game the original locks you, behind walls, story progression of you can't get to the next part until you've done this, like whether it's a vehicle or a chocobo or whatever. And I think if it's sort of segmented, where it's like, okay, we leave Midgar and we have all this freedom to do all this stuff, but we still can't just go wander all of Gaia and be able to go wherever we want. We're still sort of locked into this little area between Midgar and the marsh where you have to get a chocobo. And that's kind of what I want. Maybe there'll be more stuff to do out there in the wilderness, whether it's like random camps or there's like a quest hub or something. But I also don't want there to be too much of a time sink in each area. Like, I still kind of want it to be on rails. I don't want to be able to take the game off the rails and just wander over to, I don't know, Junon before it's time because I haven't done all these other things, and sort of mash the story up into a weird way. And I don't know, man. Like,
well, you bring up a good point.
I don't know.
People look fondly on this whole open world thing, but really Final Fantasy VII isn't an open world.
It's not.
Until you start getting some of the vehicles. And even then, it's still segmented really, really well. Like, yeah, we leave Midgar and it's an open world and we get the overmap. And I don't know what that's going to look like. I don't know if it's going to be the same scale for what we were in Midgar, if the world's going to be massive like in Final Fantasy 15, where everything's to scale and it's very, very lush and beautiful. I don't know if they're going to do like a small zoom out tactic to where like they don't have to spend, because that's a lot of time. Making an open world is a lot of dev time. I don't know if they're going to cut a corner there and like make it look a little bit different. I have no idea. But point is, it's not really open world. Like, yeah, you leave Midgar and you can get to Calm. You could skip Calm theoretically, but like the party kind of like makes you meet up there, and can you even skip Calm? Can you literally just go to the Chocobo and like go recruit a Chocobo and cross the marsh?
Nope.
Okay, well, there you go. So you can't even really skip Calm, even though you could just run past it. You got to do Calm, then you go do the Chocobo ranch, and there's ways to get through the marsh without a Chocobo, I found out recently, but I guarantee you they're not going to want us to do that. They'll definitely want us to see the Midgar Zolom.
Oh yeah.
And then you do the Mithril Caves, and then you can go to Fort Condor if you want, but there's not much to do there yet. And then it's Junon, and it really is. It's an open world, but you're on the rails following the story because of the way they built the world. There's not much to get sidetracked on there.
And like even all the vehicles prior to the airship, you can take those vehicles and go back and visit places you've already been. Like when you get the buggy, you can go all the way back to the Mithril Caves, but you still can't cross the marsh unless you can beat the Midgar Zolom. You can go back as far as that, but there's nothing new or extra there really, except for that dude asleep in the cave that gives you Mithril and like a bolt ring or something. And then like even when you get the Tiny Bronco, there's only a couple extra places you can go and see, like the Bone Village and Wutai. Like it's
almost like the game is carefully crafted to gate you from getting too far in the game to experience the open world until you're ready via the story. Weird.
Yeah, so I'm hoping I hope they just give us the illusion, which is what they did with the original. Like that gave me the illusion of a big open world when really I didn't have any choice, because there was no extra places that didn't have something to the story. Like we got introduced to Fort Condor early, but maybe that was just to get us ready to get the huge materia so that we actually won the battle and got the huge materia. So like there wasn't really any extra stuff. It was all there on the rails. It was the illusion of an open world, and that's what I want.
Yeah, and I want that as well. And I have issues with, the only modern day open world Final Fantasy I have any comparison to is obviously 15. And, I'm imagining if 7 does the world to that scale, and it could work with a buggy because we obviously have the regalia, and it could work with the Tiny Bronco cruising around on the ocean because we were on the boat in on the way to, oh god, what was the city? What was the big where you fight Leviathan? Altissia? Is that what it was called?
I'm pretty sure, yeah.
Okay, I have not played 15 enough to like have these cities memorized, but obviously you're on a big boat, so like we have reference for like scale. And even though I believe the car, like the regalia, can fly at some point in 15, it's still a car. And Highwind is a massive airship.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to visualize the scale of a massive airship and being able to control it and then imitating that in an open world.
You also have to remember, though, we are basing all of these, I don't want to say assumptions, but like envisions that we have of it on the capabilities of the PS4. By the time we get the Highwind, this is going to be PS5 hardware.
Well, and it's not just, and I 100% agree with you. You make a valid point, but I'm also just trying to visualize it on any game, like maintaining the scale of the world while having an airship that's massive and you controlling it like over the world.
I don't know. I think Grand Theft Auto 5 does it pretty well. Like you can fly around like...
I've never played it, so I'll have to believe you.
I haven't either, but I just seen videos of people like flying jets and stuff around, like fighter jets. And that's a pretty massive map for that game. And so I'd imagine, I'm very confident it's going to be a possibility.
And I mean, it might upset people, but they could do a version of Highwind where it's like, once you're in Highwind, it's like a hub, like in Final Fantasy X or X-2, where you can go around the airship and then you control it via computer. People might be upset about that, but like maybe that's something Square Enix does. I don't know. I don't know what their vision of their vehicles and the open world is going to look like.
Yeah, I guess how the Highwind's going to operate is pretty much going to depend on how the world map navigation is going to operate, because in 10 we didn't have a world map. We just went from location to location.
True.
So I feel like that's what it's going to boil down to.
Well, it'll be interesting to see what they do. I know the open world is a hot topic for a lot of people, and I'll be very, very curious how that's implemented, because it's going to be very telling for how not the story goes, but like the rest of the game goes. Like when we leave Midgar and go out into the world and go to Calm and all these places, we'll be like, okay, even though I don't know what the locations are going to look like, you will have
like a frame of reference
for how the rest of the game is going to operate in a traversal sense.
A good feeling of it, yeah. The atmosphere.
Yeah. So it'll be fun. I can't wait for part 2. Can't wait for Final Fantasy 16. It's a great time to be a Final Fantasy fan, assuming you are enjoying what they're doing with all of this. If you hate it, then, I guess sucks to be you.
If you hate it, why are you listening to us?
Right?
I'm just kidding. Listen to us.
Yes, please listen to us. But we're also not here to just relive the golden days. On that note, it's about time for us to wrap this up. Firebrand, why don't you tell us a little bit where people can check you out on Twitter and Twitch and those things?
Yeah, if you guys want to more interaction with me, I'm at Firebrand on just about everything, whether that's Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, everything. I'm Firebrand. It's a pretty unique name, so I'm the only one you're going to find. Feyer brand.
And I am on Twitter, Albatross Hill. I do not stream on Twitch or anything like that, so you can't really find me there. But please follow us, the podcast, on Twitter at Magus Brothers or Magus Brothers. And if you want to help support this podcast, we're only 2 episodes deep, so if you want to hold off on that review, I totally understand. But share, review, subscribe, spread the word. That's going to help us grow. Talk to us on Twitter. We will get on there and just talk your ear off about Final Fantasies or the episodes, whatever. We go on tangents on this podcast. We will do it on Twitter. Don't doubt us.
We have nothing better to do while we're at work. So
God, ain't that the truth?
Help our work days be better.
Yes. Help work days be manageable. On that, you guys have a great one. And thank you for enjoying this podcast with us.
Thank you all and take care.
Whenever sang my songs on the stage on my own, whenever said my words, wishing they would be heard, I saw you smiling at me. Was it real or just my fantasy? You'd always be there in the corner of this time.